Chapter 67 The Deliverance of Dvivida Gorilla. While Sukadeva Goswami continued to speak on the transcendental pastimes and characteristics of Lord Krishna, King Parikshit, upon hearing him, became more and more enthusiastic and wanted to hear further. Sukadeva Goswami next narrated the story of Dvivida, the gorilla who was killed by Lord Balaram. This gorilla was a great friend of Bhaumasura, or Narakasura, who was killed by Krishna in connection with his kidnapping 16,000 princesses from all over the world. Dvivida was the minister of King Sugriva. His brother, Mahinda, was also a very powerful gorilla king. When Dvivida gorilla heard the story of his friend Bhaumasura being killed by Lord Krishna, he planned to create mischief throughout the country in order to avenge the death of Bhaumasura. His first business was to set fires in the villages, towns, and industrial and mining places, as well as in the residential quarters of the mercantile men, who were busy dairy farming and protecting cows. Sometimes he would uproot a big mountain and tear it to pieces. In this way, he created great disturbances all over the country, especially in the province of Katwar. The city of Dwarka was situated in this Katwar province, and because Lord Krishna used to live in this city, Dvivida specifically made it his target of disturbance. Dvivida was as powerful as 10,000 elephants. Sometimes he would go to the seashore, and with his powerful hands, he would create so much disturbance in the sea that he would flood the neighboring cities and villages. Often he would go to the hermitages of great saintly persons and sages and cause a great disturbance by smashing their beautiful gardens and orchards. Not only did he create disturbances in that way, but sometimes he would pass urine and stool on their sacred sacrificial arenas. He would thus pollute the whole atmosphere. He also kidnapped both men and women, taking them away from their residential places to the caves of the mountains. After putting them within the caves, he would close the entrances with large chunks of stone, like the bringi insect, which arrests and carries away many flies and other insects and puts them within the holes of the trees where it lives. Thus, Dvivida regularly defied the law and order of the country. Not only that, but he would sometimes pollute the female members of many aristocratic families by forcibly raping them. While creating such great disturbance, sometimes he heard very sweet musical sounds from Revataka mountain, and so he entered that mountainous region. There he saw Lord Balaram in the midst of many beautiful young girls, enjoying their company while singing and dancing. Dvivida became captivated by the beauty of Lord Balaram's body, whose every feature was very beautiful, decorated as he was with a garland of lotus flowers. Similarly, all the young girls present, dressed and garlanded with flowers, exhibited much beauty. Lord Balaram seemed fully intoxicated from drinking the Varuni beverage, and his eyes appeared to be rolling in a drunken state. Lord Balaram appeared just like the king of the elephants in the midst of many she-elephants. This gorilla by the name Dvivida could climb up into the trees and jump from one branch to another. Sometimes he would jerk the branches, creating a particular type of sound, kila kila, so that Lord Balaram was greatly distracted from the pleasing atmosphere. Sometimes Dvivida would come before the women and exhibit different types of caricatures. By nature, young women are apt to enjoy everything with laughter and joking. And when the gorilla came before them, they did not take him seriously but simply laughed at him. However, the gorilla was so rude that even in the presence of Balaram, he began to show the lower part of his body to the woman, and sometimes he would come forward to show his teeth while moving his eyebrows. He disrespected the woman, even in the presence of Balaram. Lord Balaram's name suggests not only that he is very powerful, but that he takes pleasure in exhibiting extraordinary strength. So he took a stone and threw it at Dvivida. The gorilla, however, artfully avoided being struck by the stone. In order to insult Balaram, the gorilla took away the earthen pot in which the Varuni was kept. Dvivida, being thus intoxicated with his limited strength, began to tear off all the valuable clothes worn by Balaram and the accompanying young girls. He was so puffed up that he thought Balaram could not do anything to chastise him, and he continued to offend Balaram Ji and his companions. When Lord Balaram saw the disturbances created by the gorilla and heard that he had already performed many mischievous activities all over the country, he became very angry and decided to kill him. Immediately, he took his club in his hands. The gorilla could understand that now Balaram was going to attack him. To counteract Balaram, he immediately uprooted a big oak tree, and with great force he came and struck Lord Balaram's head. Lord Balaram, however, immediately caught hold of the big tree and remained undisturbed, just like a great mountain. To retaliate, he took his club, named Sunanda, and hit the gorilla with it, severely injuring his head. Currents of blood flowed from the gorilla's head with great force, but the stream of blood simply enhanced his beauty, like a stream of liquid manganese coming out of a great mountain. The striking of Balaram's club did not even slightly disturb him. On the contrary, he immediately uprooted another big oak tree and, after clipping off all its leaves, again struck Balaram's head with it. But Balaram, with the help of his club, tore the tree to pieces. Since the gorilla was very angry, he took another tree in his hands and struck Lord Balaram's body. Again, Lord Balaram tore the tree to pieces, and the fighting continued. Each time the gorilla would bring out a big tree to strike Balaram, Lord Balaram would tear the tree to pieces by the striking of his club, and the gorilla Dvivida would clutch another tree from another direction and again attack Balaram in the same way. As a result of this continuous fighting, the forest became treeless. When no more trees were available, Dvivida took help from the hills and threw large pieces of stone, like rainfall, upon the body of Balaram. Lord Balaram, in a great sporting mood, began to smash those big pieces of stone into mere pebbles. The gorilla, being bereft of all trees and stone slabs, now stood before Balaram and waved his strong fists. Then, with great force, he began to beat Lord Balaram's chest with his fists. This time, Lord Balaram became most angry. Since the gorilla was striking him with his hands, Lord Balaram would not strike him back with his own weapons, the club or the plough. Simply with his fists, he struck the collarbone of the gorilla. This blow proved fatal to Dvivida, who immediately vomited blood and fell unconscious upon the ground. When the gorilla fell, all the hills and forests appeared to totter. After this horrible incident, all the siddhas, great sages and saintly persons from the upper planetary system, showered flowers on the person of Lord Balaram and vibrated sounds glorifying his supremacy. All of them chanted, "All glories to Lord Balaram. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. By killing this great demon, Dvivida, you have initiated an auspicious era for the world." All such jubilant sounds of victory were heard from outer space. After killing the great demon Dvivida and being worshipped by showers of flowers and glorious sounds of victory, Balaram returned to his capital city, Dwarka. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 67th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Dvivida gorilla.
Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Parikshit Maharaj is becoming more and more enthusiastic to hear about the transcendental activities of Krishna. And Shukadeva Goswami narrates this story of Dvivida gorilla. As Prabhupada describes, Dvivida was a great friend of Narakasura, or Bhaumasura, and was therefore aggrieved or outraged that his friend had been killed by Lord Krishna. The Acharyas comment that this Dvivida, in his previous birth had been an associate of Lord Ramchandra, but had committed some offense to Lakshman, by which he had to become a demon, just as Jai and Vijay committed some offense and fell. So essentially, this Dvivida was contaminated by bad association. And so now he's this mischievous gorilla. And to avenge the death of Bhaumasura, he sets fire to in villages and towns and residential places. He tears up mountains. He, especially in Katwar province, where Dwarka is located, he creates disturbances. And he was powerful, like 10,000 elephants, it's described. So he would go to the sea and create so much, pound on the sea until the sea overflooded the cities and villages. He would go to hermitages and smash the gardens and orchards, pass urine on the sacrificial arenas, urine and stool, and pollute everything, kidnap men and women and confine them within caves, rape the women, and so on. So in this way, he became furious because of the death of his demonic friend and created this mischief. So then he heard one time sweet musical sounds coming from the Raivataka mountain. So there he went and saw Lord Balaram in the company of these beautiful young girls, enjoying their company while singing and dancing. And Dvivida was captivated by the beauty of Lord Balaram's body, decorated with lotus garlands. And all the girls were beautifully dressed. And Lord Balaram was a little tipsy from Varuni beverage. And the gorilla appears envious. So he was climbing up into the trees, jumping from branch to branch, jerking on the branches, and making this sound, kila, kila, and disrupting the whole atmosphere. And sometimes he would come before the women and make faces, make caricatures. And the women would just laugh. Didn't take him seriously. But the gorilla was so crude that even in the presence of Lord Balaram, he was exposing the lower parts of his body to the women, and sometimes show his teeth and move his eyebrows. So Lord Balaram is, as his name indicates, has great strength and takes pleasure in using it. So he took a stone and threw it at Dvivida, but the gorilla avoided the stone and just to insult Lord Balaram, took the pot where the Varuni beverage was kept. And Dvivida was intoxicated with his limited strength, it says. He began to tear off all the valuable clothes worn by Lord Balaram and the young girls. And he was so puffed up, he thought, oh, Balaram, what can he do? So then Balaram, seeing such disturbances and having heard about the other disturbances, that the other mischief that the gorilla was doing, took his club and the gorilla could now see Balaram's serious. So he uprooted a big oak tree and struck Lord Balaram on the head. But Lord Balaram just caught hold of the tree and was undisturbed, like a great mountain. And then to retaliate, he took his club named Sunanda. That's of interest. Lord Balaram's club is named Sunanda. And he took the Sunanda club and smashed the gorilla on the head, and blood was flowing, but it just made him look beautiful and didn't even disturb him at all. Instead, the demon, on the contrary, uprooted another tree, clipped off the leaves, struck Lord Balaram in the head, but Balaram, with the help of the club, tore the tree to pieces. Then the gorilla took another tree, and the fighting was going on. They would grab a tree, grab a tree, grab a tree, grab a tree. But the Lord Balaram would tear the tree to pieces with the club, and Dravida would grab another tree, and attack Lord Balaram, but Lord Balaram would tear it up again. So as a result of the fighting, finally there were no trees left in the forest. So in a sporting mood, Lord Balaram began to, Dravida took help from the hills and threw large stones. And in a sporting mood, Lord Balaram just smashed them to pebbles. And now, no more trees, no more stone slabs. The gorilla just stood in front of Balaram, waving his fists, and began to beat Lord Balaram's chest. And this time, Lord Balaram, of course, he followed the etiquette. The gorilla had no weapons, so Lord Balaram didn't use any weapons. But just with his fists, he broke his collarbone. And that was it, one fatal blow, and the demon fell. And the siddhas and sages and saintly persons showered flowers, glorified Lord Balaram, and in this way the chapter ends and Lord Balaram returns to Dwarka. Any questions or comments? From the internet or from yesterday? Okay, let's hear what we've got, or see what we've got. Chandra Vastev. After hearing the Pondraka, Catherine, I think that's one of those automatic, probably pastime. I was meditating on Lord Krishna entering Kamsa's wrestling arena and giving rise to different feelings in the hearts of various favorable and inimical living entities present. And when Krishna blows Panchajanyam at Kurukshetra, encouraging the Pandavas and giving fear to the hearts of the Kauravas, I request your guidance to avoid getting into speculation. Rupa Goswami teaches us about 5 primary, 7 secondary rasas. Is it right to think the status of the individual bewildered soul in terms of some? Let's see what happens. Hare Krishna. We're going to wait. Oh, it's on again. Okay. In terms of some combination of those rasas and the way it interacts with the Supreme Soul in the situations above gives rise to different realizations. Your guidance will help me in my Bhagavad Gita 1:15 class. Bhagavad Gita 1:15. What's Bhagavad Gita 1:15? See how that's going to help. Hard to think about. 115. Panchajanyam Rishikesha Deva Dattam Dhananjaya Pondrameva Mahashankam Bhima Karma Kodara. I'm not quite sure how the question relates to 115. I would have to speculate. But we come to the wrestling arena of Kamsa. People have different relationships or different relationships and consequently different visions of Krishna accordingly. Is it right to think the status of the individual bewildered soul in terms of some combination of these rasas and the way it interacts with the Supreme Soul in the situations above gives rise to different realizations? Well, the rasas, as far as I understand, have nothing to do with the bewildered soul. Rasa is a particular taste in devotional service. So there's Shanta Rasa, Dasya Rasa, and so on. There's an attachment to Krishna or an attraction to Krishna in one of these relationships, Dasya, Shakya, and so on. 5 primary relationships. And the other relationships generally enhance the experience of the 5 primary relationships. But like Kamsa, for example, doesn't have a relationship in these ways. Indirectly, you can say there's fear and so on, but it's not counted as one of the devotional mellows. It's simply fear. These devotional mellows are not found within the jurisdiction of the 3 modes of material nature. They're transcendental.
So
Yes.
this Bhayanaka, Bhibhatsa, these are the Maharaj, so this Bhayanaka, Bhibhatsa, these secondary rasas, are these the rasas of the Lord when he is enacting
And of the devotees, just like Bhishma Dev. So with Bhishma Dev, there's a chivalrous rasa, but it's a rasa of devotional service. It's not like the business here of Jayadvaita gorilla or something like that. There's fear. When there's fear, there's lamentation, there's all of that. Krishna's in the coils of the Kaliya snake. Everyone's afraid. So these other, or there's laughter, laughing, joking. So that's found with the devotees. Krishna's joking with the cowherd boys. Krishna's joking with the gopis. So that enhances the relationship of friendship or relationship of conjugal love. But these things are not exchanged with the materialists. If I want to have a joking relationship with Krishna as a materialistic person, no, that's a joke. So there's a relationship, you can say, because Krishna says, Yeyatam mam prapadyante, tam stataiva bhajamyam. As you deal with me, I'll deal with you. So they're dealing with Krishna as enemies, Kamsa, Duvida. They're dealing with Krishna as enemies. They're dealing with Krishna as the Mayavadis, almost like enemies, as impersonal conception. So, all right, you want to see me as impersonal? I'll be impersonal. But it's not that there's a yes. Or you want to oppose me, I'll oppose you. You want to see me as an ordinary human being? Yes, I'm an ordinary human being. So according to the way they approach Krishna, Krishna reciprocates with him. But it's not within the realm of rasa until there's devotional service. When there's devotional service, then these ras, even the Shanta ras, has to be some, what would you say? hint or whiff or admixture of devotional service, some devotion, even if it's only appreciation, has to be there. But if you're just inimical toward Krishna, or you don't care about Krishna, or you could think Krishna is an ordinary person, no better than a stone, then rasa doesn't come in there. Then there's only the reflection of rasa. You know, Romeo and Juliet. That's not Madhurya rasa. That's the perverted reflection of Madhurya rasa. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
From the previous classes? Or?
Yeah, previous is okay too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maharaj, when we refer to the pastime of King Nriga, in that connection, there was this dream that he had. With the dream that, no, sorry, it's not Nriga, Samba. 1 second. It is the dream where he was taken to the palace and
not dream. He was actually taken. Samba.
yeah.
Not Samba. Aniruddha.
Yeah, thank you.
Aniruddha was actually taken. It wasn't dreaming. Now I'm taken to the palace. She was having a dream.
Yes.
That some beautiful boy was kissing me and embracing me. So she had a dream. She woke up. Said, "Oh, my dear beloved, where are you?" And then her girlfriend Chitralekha, "What was that about?"
Chitralekha.
Not you.
So, yeah, thank you. And from there, the question comes that Aniruddha is the grandson of the Lord. How is that he forgot the Vedic tenets and etiquettes that he simply left and was staying with Chitralekha?
Well, of course, he didn't leave. He was transported. He was sleeping, and he woke up, and all of a sudden, he was in this palatial building with young girls, and especially with this one particular young girl. So it's not very, and he was a young man, so it's not that surprising that he forgot everything else. But these things are pastimes. The associates of Krishna are on the transcendental platform. So even if it appears that he's just like the ordinary forgetful conditioned soul who meets a girl and his eyes start spinning and he forgets everything else in the world, this is related to Krishna. So it's taking place under the influence of Krishna's spiritual energy. Otherwise, why would someone like Sukadeva Goswami want to hear about it?
Yeah. And when we have a spiritual dream, then the dream about spiritual topics have spiritual significance. This is what you are...
They may.
They may.
I may have a dream about a spiritual topic and it may be all nonsense. I dreamed that I was Krishna. I dreamed that this, can dream all sorts of rubbish. And it's in relation to a spiritual topic, but it's all mental concoction. So it's not that's the problem with dreams, that they can sometimes be unreliable. But on the other hand, there are dreams where they're accepted as communications from the Lord, whereas, what would you say? Real experiences of the presence of Krishna, the presence of the spiritual master, presence of great saintly persons. Kaviraj Goswami had a dream where Lord Nityananda Prabhu appeared before him. Go to Vrindavan, you'll achieve everything. Didn't waste time, he went to Vrindavan. I think that very night, it says, just left. So dreams may sometimes be accepted. Prabhupada had a dream, his spiritual master was calling him, take sannyas. He thought, oh, this is horrible. But he he didn't think, oh, that was just a dream. He thought, oh, Guru Maharaj is calling me. So we do sometimes experience the presence of the spiritual master or the presence of Krishna in a dream, or presence of devotees. But we should see that the dreams are at least consistent with the instructions we find in Shastra or the instructions of the spiritual master. Not like that man I mentioned the other day, his dog was telling him to kill people. And so he took the message seriously and was killing people. That's madness. So not that if we get some crazy dream, but Krishna's there or some other spiritual figure, and then we think, well, I guess I was meant to slay all the, whatever it is, do something mad. So we should be a little careful from that point of view. But that doesn't mean that we just reject dreams as all being useless.
Okay. Yeah. So we see that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took sannyas after he got in the dream instruction.
I don't know about that. I'm not saying no, I'm not informed about that.
In the Abhay Charan episodes, I have seen that.
Yeah, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I'm not not knowledgeable about that matter.
Yeah. One final question on the dream. I see here in that pastime there is this Aniruddha and Chitralekha, and just because having in dream of a beautiful personality like Aniruddha, and she desired and then she arranged so that Aniruddha is there. Can you please throw some light on how the different ashrams, like how brahmacharis, grahasthas, vanaprastha sannyasis should deal with women as well as wealth? Because these two
how the members of the different ashrams should deal with women as well as wealth. Brahmachari should have nothing to do with women. Sannyasis should have nothing to do with women. Vanaprasthas should have nothing to do with women other than their wives. And their wives, there's no sex life, no sense gratification. And the grahasthas can have limited association with women, namely their wives. They also don't have a ticket to just be free association of this woman, that woman. They have legitimate association with their wives. And they have some social life and so on. So in 3 ashrams, there's no association, no sex life. In 2 ashrams, there's not supposed to be any association. Association means association for sense enjoyment, especially. And even not for sense enjoyment, should be quite restricted. Otherwise, it becomes sense enjoyment. The brahmacharis, they go house to house. They beg some chapatis, some atta. Oh, who's going to answer the door? It's going to be a woman. So, but they don't, their business is just to beg for a little something. Mother, could you give some alms? But there's no sense gratification. Nothing like sex life, especially. What is that? Smaranam, kirtanam, keli, prekshanam, guyabhashanam, sankalpo, vyavayaschas, kalu, sampatirevacha. These are different kinds of sex life. Smaranam, to think about sex life. Kirtanam, to talk about sex life. Keli, to play around, joke with women. Smaranam, kirtanam, keli. Then prekshanam, to check out the physical features of women. Guyabhashanam, to have private talks with women. Sankalpa, to decide to go after a woman and enjoy. And vyavasayascha, sankalpa, vyavasayascha. to plan and go after, make it happen. And Kali Sampati, sex life, proper or improper. All of this is forbidden for the brahmacharis, sannyasis. And for the vanaprasthas, there's austerity. That's actually the life of the vanaprasthas. There's no sex life. Only grahasthashram. And that also within rules and regulations. Oh, and wealth. Yeah, brahmacharis, what wealth? Whatever they get, they give to the spiritual master. So they have nothing. Then sannyasis, they're also not supposed to accumulate wealth. Whatever they have, they give to the deity, to the spiritual master, to the mission. Not that they are supposed to be enjoyers of wealth. We see Sanatana Goswami kept a few gold coins and then decided that I'm worse off having them than not having them. He gave them all away. And still he had one blanket, one chadar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very glad to see him, but he this chadar. Didn't say anything, but Sanatana Goswami could understand. So he traded his chadar in for an old, beat-up one quilt. So then Mahaprabhu was very happy. So sannyasis are not meant for wealth. Brahmacharis not meant for wealth. Vanaprasthas, they're not meant for wealth. They're meant for divesting themselves of the needless accumulation of wealth. And the grahasthas are not meant for wealth either. They're meant for as much as required. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. Just for keeping body and soul together. What is that? Kamasya nendriya priti, labho jiveta yavata, as much as they need to live. And all right, if you're a king or a big man, then you have to have some wealth to show. And they need some money. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he married, he started a school, so they'd have some means of money, getting money. The grahasthas generally. And among them, the Brahmins are not meant for having wealth. Brahmins are voluntarily poor. That way they keep their purity, they keep their life simple. They're not indebted to anyone. I heard that there's a Muslim proverb that a king who keeps a poet on his payroll cuts out the tongue of the poet. Have you heard that before? Cuts out the tongue of the poet. That is to say, I'm bought now. I can't say what I want because I'm being maintained by the king. So if you want to neutralize a poet or anyone who's outspoken, just put him on your payroll. And he thinks, therefore, that Chanakya Pandit was serving as prime minister of Chandragupta Maurya, but he was living in a hut because he was a Brahmin. And when his advice was questioned, he just left. So that's Brahmin. He doesn't accumulate wealth. He accepts charity and he distributes what he doesn't need. So the Brahmins are not supposed to be wealthy. The Shudras are not supposed to be given wealth. They'll misuse it and spend it on intoxicants and so many things. The Vaishyas and Kshatriyas can have wealth. Vaishyas generate wealth by agriculture, by cow protection, by trade. And the Kshatriyas generate wealth by protection. They protect, especially the Vaishyas, or not they protect especially, but they protect everyone, and the Vaishyas have money. So the Kshatriyas levy tax, which means especially on the Vaishyas, Brahmins aren't taxed. And the Shudras aren't supposed to have money, no taxing them. But the Kshatriyas can tax the Vaishyas. And they provide safety, security, everything needed. So then it's worth it. So the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas especially are the where wealth is expected to be, not among the Brahmins, and not among the Shudras. It will cause problems for the Shudras in one way, and it will cause problems for the Brahmins in another way. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Yes, Kartikeya. A little more water.
Hare Krishna. So on this topic, yesterday, 2 days ago, we spoke about, again, very similar, Varnashram. Taking sannyas or going, taking steps towards Vanaprastha. So my question is in regards to Kardama Muni, because he was also brought up a couple days ago. I have one question. Why did he leave?
Why did Kardama Muni leave home? He left home because he's meant for spiritual realization. He's a Muni. He's not really a sense enjoyer. He's a Muni. So his purpose of his life is spiritual realization. So if one is serious about spiritualization, then one has to get free from sense gratification. And householder life generally means sense gratification. What's the word, license for sense gratification. So he agreed. The Swayambhuva Manu approached him, that, my dear sir, if you could please accept the hand of my daughter. So Kardama Muni agreed on the condition that once there's a child, I'm leaving. The duty of the purpose of marriage is to get a good child. Prajaya Naratya Bhagavatam. It's not for sense gratification, it's for having good children. So Swayambhuva Manu told, Kardama Muni told Swayambhuva Manu that once there's a child, then I'll leave. So true to his word, once there was a child, he left. Even though his child was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He didn't say, well, wait a second, when I gave that message, I didn't know what kind of son I would have. All deals are off. No, this is what I said I would do. That's what I'm going to do.
But isn't the higher principle to be in the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead rather than to leave based on a promise you've made?
Isn't the higher principle to associate with? It was Krishna's pastime, of course. That one thing is that this was Kardama Muni's role, to show the example. That even if because often we find that, yes, I'm old enough, I'm 65, I should accept the Vanaprastha ashram, but my whole family are devotees. So then let me stay at home and chant Hare Krishna. Why should I leave when everyone is a devotee? But Kardama Muni says no, or it shows the example that no, even if your one family member is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still it's our duty at a certain stage. We leave home. So he set that example. It's perhaps easier to leave home. My wife is a witch, and from after the first month, I was ready to leave, and now finally, okay, that's great. But when the wife is a devotee, she's so faithfully serving. She's such a And she's humble, she's sweet, she's chaste, she's good cook, she's devoted to the deity, she's all these wonderful things. She served me my whole, all these years. And it's hard, isn't it? One of my godbrothers told me, he said, it's not the sex, he said, it's the service. It's not, what makes it hard is not the sex, it's the service. The wife serves so faithfully. How can I give up this wife? She's dependent on me. She loves me. She's given her heart to me. How can I leave? These are the bonds that hold us, apart from sex, of course, which, but assuming that we've gotten past that, and these other bonds hold us. And she's given her heart to me. How can I leave her? It's hard to get out of how that section is there. Where's in Bhagavatam? The child is speaking in broken words. How could one ever leave him? Prahlad Maharaj's instructions. The wife is so devoted and faithful. How could we ever leave her? The daughter, fathers and daughters are quite something. So even while she's at her husband's house, he's still thinking of her. How could I leave family life? In this way, one remains trapped. So Karda Muni is setting the example that even if one's son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and one's wife is such a qualified woman as Devahuti, still he should leave. And then the wife is given over to the care of the qualified son. And that's the next pastime that Kapil Dev will instruct his mother. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
If I can add just one point. I have read in Bhagavad Subodhini.
Let's give you a microphone.
In Bhagavad Subodhini, the same question, what Prabhu is asking, there is also another reason mentioned that if the Lord appears as a child, then the Vatsalya Ras has to come, where already Kardama Muni had this Dasya Ras of serving the Lord as a servant. So to assimilate two rasas and
That's
handle.
Interesting. That would have been incompatible. Not incompatible because Dasya and is the basis of Vatsalya, but his relationship was in pure Dasya, not in Vatsalya. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
What
What kind of mukti this gorilla demon got? Does any demon got killed by Lord Balarama get the mukti?
Generally, the demons get Sayuja Mukti. They get freed from sinful reactions and merge. But there are some exceptions. We hear that this Bhutana got the position of Tatri, nurse. But generally, they get impersonal liberation. Therefore, the impersonalist philosophers are deprecated as being hardly better than the demons. They get the same. They go through so much trouble and they just get the same result. Yes. I'll switch on.
Just coming back to Varnashram, just leading from Prabhu's
Is
question.
that on? You have to speak close to it then.
Coming back to Varnashram, so the woman would go with her husband during Vanaprastha.
They might. In Vanaprastha life, there are different options. In Manu Samhita and in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's said that after 50, the husband should go to the forest alone or with his wife. So both options are there. The wife may accompany the husband as a voluntary servant, or the wife may live at home under the care of the grown sons.
So, in either of those situations, it can appear like there's a plan in place for the man.
That there's
a plan or a structure in place for a man to gradually become detached and renounced in that sense. But for a woman, it can apparently seem like whether she goes with her husband or she stays under the care of her son. So if we assume she goes with her husband to preach, and then he takes sannyas, and then she's back at home with her grown-up son who's now looking after her, it can appear like the woman's back to square one now, whereas the man's sort of gradually progressing.
So it seems like the man has a clear path back to Godhead, and the woman sort of doesn't. So one thing is, one example is there in Prithu Maharaj. He retired to the forest along with his wife, Archie, and they both performed penances, austerities, and they both attained perfection. They didn't go beyond the forest. They didn't come back. It was a one-way ticket. And they both attained perfection. And it's described, a few verses are there about the glories of Archie Devi and how she attained perfection following the footsteps of her husband. The husband may go to preach, or they may go to holy places. Generally, the preaching is the sannyas business, but there's no restriction that a vanaprastha can't preach. But the vanaprasthas typically, in the classical context, they go to live in a holy place, or they go traveling to holy places. And the wife can also go and gets the same kind of benefit as the husband. Both are there. But when the husband takes sannyas, then there's no wandering around in holy places for the wife or former wife. That won't be good for her. So because Naivam Svatantra Arhasi in Manu Sangita, a woman should never be independent. And we see in the modern context that women want to be independent, or they're told they should be independent, and then they get victimized, taken advantage of. So according to Vedic direction, childhood she's protected by her father, in youth by her husband, in old age by her sons. But the business of the woman who returns home is not just to be in the family circle and help the daughter change diapers or that sort of thing. Really, her business is bhajan. If you see here in India, right, there's so many elderly ladies and they're living at home, but their business is not social affairs and birthday parties and dressing nicely and having a happy social life in their golden years. No, bhajan. They're doing serious bhajan. And then the whole family gets the benefit that there's somebody here who's showing us what our life is actually for. So they perform that important spiritual function, and they advance in their spiritual life by seriously. At Vishnu Priya Devi, the consort of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after Mahaprabhu took sannyas, she was doing severe tapasya, just chanting, and every time she'd chant around, she'd put aside a grain of rice, and at the end of the day, cook that much rice. So who can do that? But she was doing that. So they took it seriously that way. That widowed life, or life after the husband takes sannyas, is not meant for like new youth. It's so unfortunate that old people think that after my husband dies, after my wife dies, Now it's time for finding another partner with whom to share my life. That's not the Vedic idea. Share my life with some, look at one another in our old age and slide together into decrepitude. That's not the idea. All right, now I had some quota of family life. Now it's time for getting serious. So not just that the husband is serious and the wife thinks now it's time to paint myself a little thicker and cut a new profile and somehow compete with the younger girls. And it's foolishness. So they would be serious. Let me do bhajan.
This is what also Devahuti did.
Devahuti also.
She asked Kapila Muni to give instructions, and she has perfected her life in that very lifetime.
So Devahuti perfected her life in this very lifetime, but under the instruction of Kapila Dev, she absorbed herself in bhajan, worshipping the deity and so on.
Can I just?
I can add that the Prabhupada mentioned this also. The husband dies or takes sannyas, then the former wife can engage in temple service. Yes.
So
not just that she has to be in a room someplace chanting 162 rounds, but to be engaged in devotional service, serving the deity, serving the mission.
So if a woman can come back home or stay at home if she never left in the first place and be in the grahastha setting again and continue with her bhajan and attain perfection in that way, is it a necessity for a man to then take sannyas if a woman can be in that setting and attain perfection?
Yes. It's not that because the woman can attain perfection in that setting, the man also should say, well, if the wife can attain perfection, then the husband can attain perfection. So let me stay right here at home. And I don't need to go. No, that's... No.
I mean,
because
more as an option.
What is that? Paradharma Bhayavaha in the Bhagavad Gita. Sadharma Nidhanam Shreyas Paradharma Bhayavaha. One can attain perfection by performing one's own prescribed duty. But trying to perform someone else's prescribed duty is dangerous business. Yes. So the woman attains perfection by returning home, living under the protection of the son. But the man attains perfection by retiring from family affairs and going off. Not that because this duty works for me, therefore it works for you also. No. Everyone has their own prescribed duty. And what is that better to do one's own duty imperfectly than someone else's duty perfectly? In many places in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Svay svay dharmanya pirata samsiddhim labate nara. Everyone should attain perfection by doing their own duty, not by adopting someone else's and thinking, well, it works for him, it'll work for me. Okay.
Maharaj, in this similar sense, there is in Manu Samhita, how if the husband passes away, then the woman can, on certain conditions, can remarry. This is mentioned. So
no, it's not mentioned that I've seen. I recently looked at Manu Samhita, and it's like, in fact, there's an explicit statement. Nowhere in the Shastras is there provision for remarriage of a woman. That's what I remember, if I'm not wrong. maybe Indian culture or something, but in Manu Samhita, it's very explicit that once a woman is married, she can't marry again. It's explicitly said. Now, yeah, at least that's Manu.
Because yeah, maybe the version that I was reading was some created
Popular version.
So yeah,
There's a particular chapter now. I don't have it on hand.
chapter 91.
No, not chapter 91. It's like early, chapter 3 or something like that, if I remember. Anyway, there's a place where these things are discussed, and it's quite explicit there that a woman should never remarry. That there's no place in the Shastra where it said she should remarry.
Yeah, and when the wife do not feel safe or secure,
and excuse me, just to convey something else, Prabhupada said, especially when there's a son, because according to Shastra, the son is the representative of the father. So you're remarrying in the presence of your husband. So it's forbidden anyway, but particularly when there's a son, then she becomes the enemy of the son.
in the case of son, if the mother doesn't feel comfortable or safe, can she dedicate to be in the temple and do services?
She doesn't feel comfortable or safe
because of any relationship.
The general idea, she can live under the care of her son, under the care of her father. There may not be a son. So who is that? Kamsa's wives. They had no sons, so they went back to their father, Jarasandha. She can live that way. Or there may be like an elder brother, someone like that takes charge to see that the woman is taken care of. Or temple. They can do temple service. But then, Kunti, she was under her sons.
And Dhritarashtra is taking care.
Yeah, Dhritarashtra is supposed to be taking care of Kunti, right? Because the sons were all minor at first. So she was under the care of her brother's husband's brother. Not very good care. But that idea is there. Temple is there.
Because we see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the big pandas, they're all widows, more often seen. This is what Srila Prabhupada writes.
That
when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur conducts big panda programs, he sees sometimes only the widows are there rather than active preaching power.
I just recently read something to the point where Prabhupada said that the women, if the husband takes sannyas, and there were some, like young women, even in our movement, whose husbands took sannyas. And Prabhupada said temple service and so on. We see, while I'm thinking of it, that in other communities outside of our Hare Krishna movement, the older women do great service. They're engaged in, typically, in churches, the women are coming and doing service. They're doing, whatever it may be. They do some service for the church, whether it's accounting or whatever it might be that the church needs done, making phone calls to people or reaching out to people, or the various charity work that a church might be involved in. Women are very much involved, the older women. They're free. The young men and young women are all busy with family affairs. But the older women are now, free. And what are they going to do with their lives also? Just crochet, watch television. So they were engaged in very, what's the word, profitably or very in a meaningful way by rendering community, of course, materially, because generally our view is that the various religious engagements are usually not all that spiritual, but they would be engaged in some community affairs or so on, or spiritual, according to the tradition, whatever it was, they'd be engaged in some spiritual activity, spiritual service. Kirtan bhajan, older ladies might do, cooking, cutting vegetables. In our Hare Krishna movement, there's so many activities that need to be done that the older women could do. Huge amount of outreach, what we call devotee care these days. So much opportunity is there for them to serve. According to the artistic activities, painting, secretarial work, so many things. At preaching, our older ladies have a lifetime of experience. They can preach to the devotees, preach to others. There's no restriction. So it's not that they just say, okay, that's it, my life is over, and now I just, nothing to do. They can do so much.
Yeah. So basically from Madhurika Mataji's question, it is like, it could be that even just like how the men are able to free themselves from the family responsibilities, if women also can have, so that they can also fully focus on Krishna.
Yeah, it's not that the women should stay at home and then just be pressed into babysitting and all of that. Naturally, women may be so inclined, they'll help with the child care. But it should be remembered that their business is bhajan. How to very seriously engage in hearing, chanting, serving. And naturally, they may help with the home affairs. It's not that, no, I can't cook anything because they can also do.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm
Hare
sorry
Krishna.
that this topic is somehow all the time we are talking about it, but when, for example, when husband died or the wife died when they are in 30s,
When they're
like 31, 32, they are very young, means that to not get remarried again will be, it's like very hard to go through life alone. And if there is no children, especially no boy, no girl, whatever, to be alone and even have no family because you have no brother, you have no, especially when you are in Krishna consciousness, family can reject you. So this, very special situations, and of course we have to follow, but it's like...
Well, you're right, it's hard. If they have no husband, no father, no son, no brother. Therefore, it's the duty of the grahastas to see that women in such a situation are taken care of. Therefore, I'm so distressed to see ISKCON focusing on high-profile charity to the world and not seeing to the needs of its own members. I don't understand it. Why we want to have our pictures taken, distributing charity to orphans and cripples, or not cripples, So what's the word? Divyanga, all, whatever. We have to be seen that, what are you doing to help people? Oh, we're distributing food on the embankment in London, and we're doing this, and 40,000 and 100,000 and this and that. And what about your own people? The hell with them.
And what I can say, actually, when somebody died who was really close to you, like husband or wife, you need few years, like counseling, to get
There's so
over.
much,
and also this is...
Yeah. The women need care. Women have to be cared for. When we say naivam svatantramarsi, they should never be given independence. But then that means you have to care for them. Just like a child should not be given independence. But not that if the parents die, you say, well, we're going to lock you in the cellar, or, there has to be care. So whose job is this? It's not the job of the sannyasis. It's not the job of the brahmacharis. It's not the job of the vanaprasthas. It's the job of the grihasthas. So that's where the responsibility, and it's not the job of ISKCON. If it's, ISKCON, can I say on camera that ISKCON is unreliable for these things? You can't really just say, well, ISKCON will take care of me. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I'll take care of you. He never says ISKCON will take care of you. So what is the arrangement? If you wait for the ISKCON apparatus to kick in, it may someplace. There may be a very well managed and temple somewhere with real spiritual vision, and they have a provision for taking care of the elderly ladies or widowed ladies, and it's wonderful. But the general expectation, especially at this stage, still early stage of our development, is it's not there. So who's going to, and then, oh my God, it's this much money per month, and she's not doing anything. Now she has to pay for doctors. The treasurer, is like, couldn't we get a ticket for her to another temple? And, they don't want to accept the responsibility. And they're brahmacharis, and they're focused on book distribution, whatever it is. So it's the grihasthas. Grihasthas have a license for sense gratification, and this is the price of the license. You have to take care of the other three sections of society: the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis. And every religious or non-religious community has some arrangement by which they take care of widows, old men, children, in the Vedic culture, cows. They may not be productive. Old cows don't produce anything of great value, but no, they did so much service. They're cows. We have to take care of them. The orphaned children we have to take care of. The elderly men, they're not contributing anything either. And they're like expensive because doctors and this and that. But not that we take service from you while you're young and then spit you out when you're old. We have to take care of all the devotees. So whose job is that? That's the job of the grihasthas, because they're the ones who are supposed to have money. They're the ones who are earning. There's the ones who are building houses for themselves and have, one or two or three cars and whatever else. They should be the ones who, among themselves, arrange that we have to take care of these people. This is our duty and our privilege. This is how we become purified. What is that? Yagyadana tapas chaiva pavanani manishinam. One becomes purified by charity. And charity is the specific duty of the householders. For the vanaprasthas, austerity. They become purified by austerity. And the grihasthas become purified by charity. And Hare Krishna, yeah. So charity begins at home. This is the duty of the grihastas. And it's so important to make sure that all the devotees are taken care of, especially the widows, the orphans, the old men, and people who are helpless in one way or another, the cows. This is the duty of the grihastas. And by doing that duty, the grihastas will feel satisfaction. Yes, I'm taking care of the devotees. I'm giving charity. But what are you doing with your life? No, I'm giving charity. Yeah. By performing those prescribed duties, I'll feel I'm becoming a little purified. Then later it's easier to accept the Vanaprastha. And the whole system works. Now I'm a grihasta. I have to part with this money, or I feel honored to part with this money. Later I'll become a Vanaprastha. The money comes to me. Later I become a Vanaprastha. The money comes to me. Because now I'm not working. I'm not earning. I have no steady means of maintaining myself. What will happen to me? So, in my previous, the people who are now in the position I was in support me because I'm in the position, or support me who am in the position they're going to be in. So then you get a well-rounded society in which everyone plays their role and everyone's therefore taken care of. When I'm a grihasta, I take care of the vanaprasthas. When I'm a vanaprastha, the grihastas take care of me. When I'm a woman, I take care of my husband, I take care of my son, and they take care of me. And if they can't, then the community, either the brother or some response, or else the community has to say that this woman has no husband. What are we going to do for her? She needs this, she needs this. And in a proper community, the men come forward and say yes. Not just like, oh God, another one. And if the women are, what's the word? If they're serious Vaishnavis, then the men really feel that it's a privilege. Men really feel that it's a privilege that we get to, because of Vaishnavi Seva. We get to take care of a saintly person. So is that okay? Yeah. Well, we have the following situation. It's 6:23 and we end at 6:30. Who wants to lead kirtan? Even to understand the question, if you don't. And who's doing kirtan tonight? Oh, of course. You're on. Hare Krishna.
Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivasesa Sunyavade Vasatya Desatarine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnuvad Panuman Subri Braj Kacharya Stotra Sadashri Shamad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Charya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Thank you all once again for coming. Again, we have these books available. And the thought is, if you know that you're welcome to take extra copies and to distribute. If there's someone you know or someone you don't know that you might like to distribute a book to, just take extra books, and when you get a contribution for them, you can hand it over to our treasurer, Praveen Prabhu. So in that way, because now I have a good supply. There's plenty of books. So if you'd like to take some, especially now there are many foreign devotees who may not otherwise have access to these books. And Americans do, South Africans do, and that's about it. So other visiting devotees might like to have copies, or anyone. So if you'd like to take extra copies, we trust you. Just take them and send some money this way when they're sold. There's no fixed price, whatever you want to charge. And that's the story. Any questions? Okay, no short questions. Good. And be sure to take some prasadam on your way out. Thank you. Hare Krishna. And thank